This session will start in 1 minute. 1 minute.
Check. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this very interesting session on WASH, water, sanitation, and hygiene. Where does it fit in urban planning? I think most of us here can agree that whenever we talk about cities and all kinds of development issues in cities, WASH kind of does play a central role. But that's because we are heavily biased. We're in this room for a water conference and discussing a lot of WASH. So I think we're biased. But if we could take a step back and really understand, how do the urban planners think? How do the non-WASHies think? Then we will actually try to get somewhere in terms of bridging these silos of WASH and other urban development practitioners. So today we have the pleasure of convening a session with an academic institution, with a UN agency, with a multilateral development bank, and with an NGO. So this is a really interesting session where different perspectives are coming together. And of course, we're not forgetting the government partners, because we're also bringing some of their voices in, and trying to understand, where does WASH fit in this big urban planning paradigm? And it is a hybrid session, so I also want to extend my welcome to those who have joined us online. And we will try to make this as interactive as possible. Because Stockholm World Water Week is a unique place, and we are all here to really exchange ideas. So we are going to minimize us talking and us presenting, and actually leverage the group intelligence here, and really want to hear from your experiences and your feedback on some of the projects that we've been doing. So with that said, let us first begin with something that's interesting, on getting your feedback on why you're here. Because you're all obviously interested in WASH and I guess urban WASH in particular. But before any of us give you a conceptual framework or an understanding of an anecdotal experience, we actually want to hear from you on why you think we should integrate WASH in urban planning. And we want to get interesting experiences from you. It could be a good example, it could be a bad example, but we want to hear real stories rather than just talking about conceptual frameworks, etc. And to incentivize this, we also have brought some treats from Switzerland. So we have some small boxes of chocolates. So to some of the best answers, we would be really happy to share those with you. And here is Marisa, who will probably judge saying, okay, I'm going to give you a box of chocolates or not. But anyway, so open to hearing from you. Why should we integrate WASH in urban planning? Yes, sir.
Well, I'm asking the from the Senior Fellow, University of Westminster School of Architecture and Cities. I'm intrigued. I was actually very intrigued by the title of the workshop, because for much of for the history that I understand of urban planning, the WASH has been the reason for urban planning. So to improve conditions in cities, for sanitary conditions in cities, to create better spaces, better living conditions in cities, that has always been the basis of most of urban planning and most of thinking behind it. And at the same time, if you look at even concepts like garden cities and green cities, the whole basis of it is that one of the outcomes which is most desirable is better sanitary conditions, and that's the basis of all the bylaws and all the planning that has gone into cities across the world. So I was very, very intrigued and curious to know why is the WASH community or the urban planning community feeling that they are separate things and need to be reintegrated, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Now I do realize that cities have become much bigger than what they used to be, and perhaps it's the domination of transport planning which is making the two fields a bit separate than they would have been in most of history. So that was my response.
Thank you so much. That's a very interesting perspective, that we're probably fighting between transport and WASH, which is dominating the planning. So, Marisa, if you were satisfied with that answer. Yes.
My name is Vida Duty. I'm from IRC Ghana, and I want to move a bit away from our professional world to take you to the lane of indigenous knowledge. In most cases, no community starts without thinking about the source of water. So when people migrate and they go to start a community, the first thing that they look out for is that there will be a nearby source of water there. We have our cities, sometimes they are a bit removed from the natural water source. But then there cannot be, the society cannot survive if we don't have water. So it's a necessity to be integrated in every planning. And that didn't begin with us who have gone to school, even for our forefathers. That was the first thing that they considered. So it is essential that we look at that. Thank you.
Yes, that's actually an excellent response, because if you look at all the major historical cities around the world, any of them, whether it's Cairo or Delhi or London, or name any big city that's been there for a long, long time, they're always by the water. So that's an excellent response. But I know that you work at IRC a lot in Ghana and also in Accra. So I'm going to push you a bit more to actually tell us an example where you've encountered maybe the municipal people and the WASH people, the utility, are probably not talking to each other, or probably, I know you have a lot of examples. So you're not going to get a chocolate box without a juicy example for us. So could we give the mic back there? I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, but I know I've seen you give really good examples. So maybe
we used to have the Ministry of Ministry for Local Development, and they are responsible for urban planning as well. So sanitation was put in that ministry so that we would ensure integration. And then we also used to have the Ministry of Water Resources, Works and Housing. And it wasn't for any reason that the two were put together, because we wanted to give, but when water and sanitation were within those ministries, unfortunately, the attention on them got lost. Logically, you might think that being in the same ministry, you have that happening. And so to give greater attention to water and sanitation, the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources was created. I think, though now we have 3 ministries, because we have a representative for water and sanitation, it compels the 3 to sit and work together. So that's how we have resolved it. But definitely on the ground, you see that sometimes we don't have that policy coherence and implementation coherence that we envisage. We should be intentional
Yes.
to be able to achieve that.
Okay, thank
Do
you.
I qualify for the chocolate?
Yes, now you are. Now you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to take just one or two quick examples, and I see a lady here in the front. Perhaps we could pass the mic to the lady there in blue. And I want real examples and maybe a bit quickly because.
Oh, hello, I'm Samia from Bangladesh. I'm working at WaterAid Bangladesh right now, but I am trained as an architect, so I'm talking from a different perspective. So I have had this, I wouldn't say privilege, the opportunity to work in community-based architecture in Bangladesh for a few months. So I went to the slums. We used to work in the slums where the sanitation workers or the waste workers live. And I used to see that there are channels where the wastewater is flowing and kids playing just beside that. So where does urban planning come over there? And why are they playing beside the not planned waste channels, but beside the water where people are defecating and people, even people are washing their vegetables over there because they don't have, they're from the informal settlements, and in the informal settlements, usually the water sources or the sanitation system is not planned. So while the cities are growing, we are, like he's mentioned, we are looking into infrastructure development, but we should also focus on the informal settlements and how they're growing and where WASH comes in to serve them.
Perfect.
In the urban planning. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Marisa is right next to you, and she's, I guess, very happy to share a box. Maybe final point from Sam. We were keeping one box for the coffee later, but.
No, thank you. So Sam Dabble from Water and Sanitation for the Urban Port. I mean, it's really exciting to see this session. I mean, just to share a reflection from our experience, so we work with the mandated service authorities to extend services in informal settlements, slum areas. And I think we've really come to see from that experience there's a limit on the level of coverage that can be achieved unless those areas are upgraded in an integrated way. So increasingly advocating for that integrated slum upgrading, and that's here I feel like I'm quoting your literature, Abhishek, but that's essentially because of the interdependencies between the different basic services like solid waste management, road access for pit emptying services, drainage, land tenure, which is really helps in terms of utility connections. So many interdependencies there that if you're looking from a WASH perspective, actually what you need to be doing is upgrading the settlement overall, also to deliver health impacts because you're addressing then different pathways for fecal contamination.
Perfect, thank you.
And just one example is Mukuru in Kenya, in Nairobi. So they've designated that, the Kenyan government, so it's a high-level political decision to designate that as a special planning area. And an overall slum upgrading program with simplified sewer connections as one kind of context-specific sanitation approach within that. So that's a positive example, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Obviously, he quoted some of my literature, so I'm very happy to extend thank you so much for all these real examples, right? So we heard about the contention between transport and WASH. We heard about historical ways in which cities actually came together and civilizations were formed, the environmental health and public health hazards that we heard from Samia, and also slum upgradation as a particular example from Kenya. So just to summarize some of what you've already heard is we heard about how WASH has synergies with other urban development goals, how incoherent planning, if planning is not coordinated, there will be implementational challenges, and how the service providers in many contexts and the users in many contexts are often the same. So it makes sense to coordinate this a bit more. And the aspect of public health and environmental health was already highlighted. And in Stockholm this last few days, what we've been hearing again and again is about climate resilience. And I guess WASH is the way climate takes its manifestation, and where it happens is actually often in cities. Of course, everywhere, but cities is a big playground for climate disruptions. And similarly, we can also not just think about what are the negative interactions that's happening, but also talk about leveraging the synergistic interventions that are possible. As, for example, we can think about managing solid waste and fecal waste together. So there's a whole bunch of different things that is why we are here. And we have a really interesting session planned in terms of getting into the details. We've already heard about the why should we talk about WASH in the context of urban planning. And now we're actually going to quickly shift gears to hear from the 4 organizations which are convening the session about what they do, where exactly are they going to get their examples for the breakout tables from, and then the audience, both online and on-site, get to choose which breakout tables that they go to. And then we have a detailed 30-minute discussion on the same. And then we come back, collect the highlights from the discussions, and also, very important, actionable steps. So that's the outline of the session. And I would like to start inviting one representative from each of the organizations to come forward. And please stick to time. Although I realize I didn't, I would request you to stick a bit more to the time to make up for this. Very quickly, what does the organization do? What are the 2 breakout groups that the online and offline participants have a choice from? So firstly, let's get Christoph Luthi, head of EAWAG Sandek, to briefly present. Thank you.
Thanks, Abhishek. So EAWAG Sandek, we are an applied research institution working on WASH and planning issues for the last 3 decades. So quite some experience going back. The research that we do deals with programming, planning for basic urban services, and how to better link services with urban planning. Some of the documents that we've been publishing in the recent past, I'm sure you know them, the Compendium, the Sanitation 21 Framework, or Community-Led Urban Environmental Sanitation Approach. Recently, we've become interested in integrated, or how do we better integrate services, and we're involved in a 4.5-year program in Uganda, where we're looking at service integration in 2 small towns north of Kampala. And this work we're carrying out together with Makerere University, Professor Charles Iwagawa sitting back there. And we have 2 tables that we'd like to share with you. The first table is the on-site table. Abhishek, I believe it's... Yes. Where? No, that's World Bank.
The on-site table is that one.
That one, okay. That will be looking at integration of basic services in small towns in Uganda. And I think you'll be leading that discussion. The main question we want to discuss there is how do we leverage the different interlinkages between water, sanitation, and solid waste in a small town context in Africa. The second table will be online, and that is here with Charlotte. And there we're looking at WASH and solid waste management in schools and institutions. So we want to look at how can WASH in institutions be integrated in urban planning, or better integrated in urban planning. Because at the moment, as you know, in most countries, they report to different ministries. There's a total disconnect to what's going on in the urban planning sector. So I think also some interesting discussions from there. My time's up. Next.
Yes. Thank you so much, Christoph. So next, alphabetically, it's IRC. So could I invite Jane? So Jane is the head of IRC in Uganda, and over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jane Nabunyamulumba. I'm from Uganda. I work with IRC. IRC is an organization. Call it international. We call it national at our level in the countries. But it's an international think and do tank. Think and do. You think, you do. But mainly connecting with different partners, local governments, central governments, academia, to do what? To strengthen systems, waste systems in particular, and enabling the waste systems to deliver services forever and reaching the last mile, everybody out there, because that's what we do. Specifically for this session, we have made an attempt and I think it's working, to integrate urban wash, urban water, sanitation, and hygiene. In my country, you don't want to use wash, because somebody will say you're going to wash. To integrate water, sanitation, and hygiene in the urban, specifically the small towns, by supporting the development of town sanitation plans, plans developed by the town councils and the people in those councils on how to address specifically sanitation and hygiene, written in their own language, but with guidelines from the Ministry of Water and Environment. I submit. That's what we do in Parliament.
Depends which parliament, but that's great. Thank you so much, Jane. And I will once again introduce the tables in a bit. So in case you missed out, you will get it again. Next, we have from the World Bank, Miguel Vargas Ramirez. He is the head of the Citywide Inclusive Sanitation Initiative, the global lead for sanitation. Over to you, Miguel.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abhishek. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, so I'm missing the chocolates for my intervention. The Citywide Inclusive Sanitation has been for about 5 years old. What on the part of proof of concept, but now we work in the mainstream of citywide inclusive sanitation and application to the urban planning is one of our key key objectives. So for today, we have 2 presentations, one that look at the urban planning from the beginning, from the city of Gulu, Uganda. In Uganda. The second one is from Brazil, where we actually trying to integrate this approach of incorporating wash services in the overall urban upgrading. And that urban upgrading not only looks at the wash services, but also look at solid waste, flood management, as you can see in the Brazil example. So very excited to be here. And so we'll have the table of the World Bank sharing the Uganda and Brazil presentations. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. We didn't hear some of the first few words that you said, but we will catch up with that in the tables, I presume. So thank you, Miguel. Sorry? I will do a summary of all the tables so that you'll be able to pick again. Then we have from UN Habitat, Hezekiah Pire, who's the head of WASH unit at UN Habitat. So over to you, Pire.
Thank you very much, Abhishek, and let me take this opportunity to also thank you for joining this session. We are different from Habitat for Humanity. Many people confuse UN Habitat for Humanity. We are a UN agency, one of the 2 UN agencies headquartered in the Global South. We are based together with UNEP in Nairobi. Urban planning and design is at the heart of the work of UN Habitat. We support member states in terms of normative work and also technical assistance in the formulation of urban policies, in the formulation of strategies, but also in building local capacity for urban design and urban planning. So you can imagine the space between urban planning and WASH. We are in the WASH department, very vibrant. We also have a very vibrant urban planning and design section for many years working separately. Until recently, because of a lot of pressure, we have started to work together, and we are driving 2 projects in Habitat, one driven by the urban planning unit called Water for Leverage, using water as a leverage for urban planning. In our department, we are implementing a program called Citywide Inclusive Sanitation, looking at how national urban policies, strategies, and plans can better integrate sanitation. We work around 3 areas. One is how to support the strengthening of national and local data and information management systems for sanitation, both seaward sanitation and non-seaward sanitation. And in the non-seaward sanitation is where the biggest challenge is. The next one, which we will share in this discussion today, is how to better mainstream sanitation in national urban policies and strategies. And then lastly, what we do in that project is also global learning. We have a platform called Global Water Operators Partnership Alliance based in Bonn, and they facilitate water operators partnerships around these issues. And we want to see how more of sanitation-focused partnerships can be promoted. Today, we will be in table 4, where I will be taking you through our experience in Kenya and in Nepal, but also online. We have one colleague based in Nepal who will be taking the online audience through the experiences of mainstreaming sanitation in national urban policies in Nepal, and another colleague based in Nairobi that will also be taking the online audience in the experiences of mainstreaming sanitation. And we work directly with the departments of urban planning and housing as opposed to the Department of Water and Sanitation. You're most welcome.
Thank you so much, Pire, and to all the rest of you as well for the pitches. Now, I'm going to take a couple of minutes to explain how the breakout groups will work. So I saw that we have about 35, 40 participants online, and there's a sizable number on site as well. So originally we said each one of us will have one online table and one on-site table, but that might change a little bit based on past experience. But I'm going to run through some of these tables so that both online and on-site participants can choose from, and I'll tell you which one is probably going to be a bit of both. So first, in the same order as presented, the first on-site table will be from EAVAC, which is, I think, could Marisa, could you just lift the table 1 card? So that table, we will be discussing. Each table will have a short presentation and one guiding question for the discussion. So in the first table, we're going to talk about planning water supply, sanitation, solid waste, and possibly stormwater together. But the guiding question is, what are the interlinkages that we can actually leverage to push WASH in the urban agenda? So we want to hear from you. So please go to table 1, if that's your interest. The second on-site table is going to be the district WASH planning and the town council-led WASH planning that Jane is going to be doing, and that is that table 2? Where's table 2? Here's table 2. Could one of you please lift that? So Jane, you will be leading this table here. And here the guiding question is, how can urban WASH planning be integrated in the broader district scale or area-wide planning approaches? So for many countries, this becomes more relevant because of the power center and power structure. So please join table 2 for this. The third on-site table is going to be led by Sasha right here from the World Bank. And that is going to be talking about the case from Gulu in Uganda. And the guiding question here is going to be, how can WASH service providers and municipal administrators really come together and plan for both urban planning in general, but also specifically on urban upgrading itself? So please join Sasha's table in table 3. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. This is not Pire, but Sasha. In table 4, which is what Pire from UN Habitat explained, we're going to talk about WASH in national level urban planning policies. And I guess you will focus on Nepal, but also draw on lessons from Kenya. And here the guiding question is, to what extent, especially from your experience on sanitation, should we integrate that into the national urban policies? So if that is your interest, please head to Pire's table right there. And then there's two tables that's going to be a little bit of a hybrid. And the first one is where Charlotte is sitting. So we've made sure there are very few chairs for the on-site participants to come here. So this is going to be one of those tables where we're going to focus on institutions in particular. So we're going to focus on how, for example, in schools, that's what Charlotte's going to present on, how the interlinkages actually manifest in schools. And the discussion will be around how can we think about institutions, schools, healthcare facilities, other commercial establishments in urban planning. And there, Christoph and Charlotte will be leading that table, mostly for the online participants, but few of you who are interested can also join this table. And then the next table is where Ingeborg, Lucas are sitting for a few of the on-site participants. But this is, again, mainly targeted at the online participants, where we're going to talk about data visualization. How can you use water flow diagrams, perhaps shit flow diagrams, etc., for bringing stakeholders together? So if you're interested in that topic, please, especially for the online participants, please choose the breakout group that says IRC Breakout 6. And then we have another really interesting topic right here, where Martin will be sitting, on World Bank's experience from Brazil. And here, there's going to be a couple of case studies that the World Bank has been working on for the last 30 years on integrating wash and basic sanitation as the Brazilians describe. And here again, the conversation and the discussion is going to be around how do the service providers, the utilities come together with the municipality itself. So if you're interested in that, that's again, mostly for online participants, but I know the number of you are probably also interested in Brazil, and that's the only Latin American case here, so you're also welcome to join this in person. And finally, for the online participants again, this is going to be similar to what I described that Pire will be heading here. You'll hear directly from Simon and Sudha, who were leading this work on ground in Kenya and Nepal on their experiences of integrating sanitation and wash in general in national urban policies. That's a lot of me talking. That explains everything in one slide. So please feel free to pick. And those of you online, I've seen that in the past session, some of you think that when it goes into breakout groups, it actually gets less interesting. I think it gets more interesting, so please do stick around. And I think the tech team here will also put you into breakout groups to kind of make it even, but you have a choice of switching once you are in one of these breakout groups. So let's start the countdown now. You have about 30 minutes to really discuss each of these discussion questions. And when you come back, I'm going to ask for highlights, but also actionable steps. So please make sure that you discuss what can we do now to make this a reality. Thank you.
Okay. I'm not sure if anyone's in this online. I don't know how to tell. Do I broadcast? Where's Abhishek?
Online, and there's about 10 people.
Yeah, I know, but where's Abhishek again?
You're supposed to share, right? You want to share?
I'm sharing.
Yeah, we're already sharing. So I think this is someone else managing money, and then you should just put your.
Do I close all rooms though? Do I close all rooms?
No.
Do I broadcast? No. I'm sharing, but I don't know what else is happening.
Yeah, if you're sharing, that's good. Which breakout
Do I
group?
close that?
Yeah, they will assign them. Don't worry about that. So Mark, let's start the video first. No, you can forget this. Are you in the breakout group? No. Okay, sorry. Let's just share videos.
I was sharing. If you want to stop sharing.
Okay, can you go to the breakout group that says World Bank? That says World Bank. Go down. Yeah, that's you. Okay, good. Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate all the wonderful discussions that's going on, but I'm having a bit of FOMO because I was there on only one table. So I'm really interested in hearing what the other tables also were discussing. So, and I'm sure the FOMO is not just in me, that's in many of you, although each of these discussions were interesting. I think the wider audience would like to hear it. So could I ask the IT guys to kind of close all the breakout groups and bring everyone to plenary? Brilliant. So that's great. We are now going to move on to the closing plenary, where each of your tables, both online and on site, one of you are going to come up here, or if you feel more comfortable with the setting that you're in, we can pass the mic, to report back two things. What was the answer to your key question? Have you even answered that? That's one question. And perhaps there was a highlight, the one spark moment that you had that you might want to report, right? So, and when I say 2 minutes, I really mean 2 minutes, because the bad cop is not me, but that's Vasco, my colleague. And if you look at him, you'll know that he is a bad cop. So, so he's gonna, at the end of 1 minute, he's gonna point at 1 minute, and then he's going to stand up and ring. So please do try and stick to answering these questions as quickly as you can, and while still passing on what you heard. And then we still have one more point to do after this, because it's not just we collect the feedback and say thank you, but we have one more step, which is collecting action steps forward. So we really don't want to leave the discussion hanging. I was really inspired by staying at the, when attending the All Systems Connect conference, where they really brought action steps, and I think at every session we want to do that. So very quickly, I'm going to invite in the order of tables, and perhaps we'll pass hand mics. Maybe that's quicker. We eliminate some time of walking. So table 1, Marisa, we'll pass the mic to you, and very quickly, Vasco's already counting down. 2 minutes, just a quick highlight and the answer.
I think I got the difficult job of summarizing everything. I'll try to do my best. So our question was, what are major interlinkages that could be leveraged to include WASH in urban planning? And one of the key points we discussed, since this was not a lot discussed in WASH and solid waste, is stormwater management. This is a lot of times neglected. For example, when cities that receive a lot of rainfall, there are landfills with dumps of waste. When these get flooded, the leachate can go into the water, and water sources get contaminated with waste leachate. Also, like sludge coming from sanitation facilities can go into stormwater drainage channels, for example. So stormwater management was one point. Then managing solid waste together with fecal sludge. So for example, I will quote someone from this table. So more money is in shit than in water. And this actually shows that we can do some resource recovery if we manage wastewater streams properly, or having composting facilities for fecal sludge and solid waste. And then one other point was we should have a climate resilient inclusive planning. So how to integrate also the term of resilience and climate change into WASH and urban planning. So into the infrastructures, how to make resilient and inclusive infrastructures. And very briefly, should I also give some action points, or
no? That's next. That's next.
Okay.
Just the highlights. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So it was excellent discussions. So next is table 2. Where's table 2? Here. No. Table 2 is here. I think yours was about the wider area-based planning, not just looking at cities, but the districts level and town councils. You can just share what you discussed.
Okay, so we were discussing what Jane was saying about how in Uganda the town sanitation planning is following the government's long-term planning and then short-term planning, and then it goes down to the district area planning, and then going into the town planning. I think we just have a general discussion. We didn't actually answer the question. There you go.
Yeah, some of the positive points was really that the planning is really locally driven. So it's really the town councils put on their own plans. It's really self-determination. And they also have to-do lists and budgets. And Jane also presented us some of the advantages. So it's really ownership building and some of the challenges. And that was really eye-opening and really challenging, because the big problem is that actually resources are not available to put in any of the infrastructure. So, I mean, the town is dense. There is a need for lined sanitation facilities. People only have pit latrines, but there are no budgets to put in lined sanitation facilities. A particular town here has a huge waste management problem, because there are weekly markets, and after the markets are over, there is a huge pile of waste, and there is no, I mean, there is the need to manage the waste, but no facility, no income, no infrastructure. Fecal sludge management is not possible because there is no budget for trucks, for renting trucks. The waste and the fecal sludge management plant is about 3 hours away. So yeah, a lot of challenges to overcome. And the question is, there was a comment that, I mean, it's possible to get some seed funds for certain towns with special connections. But I mean, special connections are not available for all the towns, the 2,000 towns. So yeah, scaling up is really an issue.
Thank you. Although that didn't answer the question that you originally raised, it's still very interesting and important points that came out. So next we have the World Bank's discussion from their table.
Thank you for actually putting that up. I was trying to see how best to summarize the guiding question. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angela from Zambia, and I work with Border Zambia. And in our group, as is put on the screen, we were looking at how a wash service provider and the municipal administration can actually come together for urban planning. We did not get to a conclusive answer to the question, but a lot of brainstorming actually did happen with different scenarios that were brought out on how best these two can actually work together. Cases from some of the experiences within Gulu town were brought out and how they failed. But I think what came out as one of the highlights is, number one, that the service provider is actually very active and strong within the country, but their strength is more in most of the implementation, but their social arm is actually quite weak. And so our presenter described this as a dinosaur, you know, strong and, you know, brave, but then it's just eating up everyone and not actually giving a service, and also bringing out this social aspect to the service delivery. And so really the highlight was that a lot of exposure in that particular space is required for them to see that it's quite cardinal to have that even as they go ahead in service provision, and also to integrate it in urban planning. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I like that last line, exposure is key to innovation. So thank you so much. So next we have from UN Habitat's table.
Thank you very much. I get to speak again. I wanted one of the table members to speak, but I took notes. so I'm in the fix. But we answered the question, and I'm happy. I'm happy to report that beyond Nepal and Kenya, now we have 3 more case studies.
Oh, wonderful.
So we have a very good experience from Ghana, from Malawi, and from Ethiopia on how they are responding to the challenges of how to better mainstream sanitation into national urban policies. In Ghana, the problem with the sector leadership and coordination is a challenge, and the functional responsibility for sanitation exists outside the Ministry of Water and Sanitation with local governments, and this sometimes bring a lot of problems. So the need for coordination is a big issue, and it was suggested that maybe a National Development Commission that brings together many departments of government could be the avenue to better integrate issues of sanitation into planning. In Malawi, a very rich experience. The new policy in Malawi has mandated the water boards to take over the responsibility of sanitation from city councils. So also the issue of coordination, because it's a new mandate, you are inheriting staff, infrastructure, philosophy of working from this department of sanitation. How do you integrate them into water? It's a big issue, and specific recommendations from Malawi. We need a clear sanitation guide to help the mainstreaming process. We need better orientation to take up this new mandate, both for staff, management, and also board members to better understand the new mandate for sanitation. Capacitating the institutions through financing also to help in the sector reform, but also changing the mindset of consumers. Yeah, thank you very much. So Ethiopia also a very good experience, but the recommendation from Ethiopia is if you are going to have a good policy landscape, that policy landscape should bring issues of land rights and also service fee policies into the bigger agenda of sanitation. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you so much. National Development Commission. If this becomes reality in the coming years, you heard it here first. Great, thank you so much, Pire. Now moving on to the first online/hybrid table. So that is here. Christoph?
We looked at an interesting study that Charlotte did in 16 schools in Uganda and came up with a very insightful finding, that is that school water supply does source switching quite often, and that depends on seasonality. So during dry season, different water sources are used than in the rainy season. And that leads us to a very clear recommendation for urban planning, that is making systems more resilient by trying to rely not only on one system, but on a multiplicity of systems like rainwater, boreholes, piped water. That's it.
Wow, I love how the Swiss are all on point this time, but very good, thank you. Moving on to the next table, which is IRC, but who's presenting? Is it Digbijoy or? Yes? Yeah, of course, everything's possible in this brilliant room with the tech guys. Could you bring up Digbijoy? Maybe I said it too soon, but I know it's coming. Digbijoy, are you here? Okay, we have the luxury of actually having two others here, Ingeborg and Lucas. So since we have you here, would one of you like to report back, please?
Okay, so we had the case of Dhaka city in Bangladesh, and we together with the help of Digiboy, who's unfortunately not online, or he is online but unfortunately not able to present, we made a water flow diagram of the domestic water use of Dhaka city, and we think that this instrument, this water flow diagram, it's a very nice way of
presenting what's actually on the table. So visualizing what's there, one actionable step to bring WASH more into the urban planning. There was also a feedback in the breakout room that we had. It's a bit the egg and chicken problem, like who has to do the first step? Is it more the planners that have to come closer to urban or bring WASH into urban planning, or the service providers? Do you have anything to add?
And I think actually the question was put back to us. So we had this question like, how can urban planners fit this into our planning? And we said, well, that's exactly what we're trying to do. And would this actually help them to do that?
So the next part is you're going to answer that, but very quickly to the next table. Thank you, IRC team. Next table is Martin Gambrel from the bank on Brazil.
Right, so if you didn't come to our table, you really missed out. We talked about 30 years of experience of integrated intervention of water and urban upgrading and urban services that the World Bank's been engaged with in Brazil. And one thing that the table, those that were present, said was, wow, it's really interesting to know about these experiences and we should disseminate them more. That was one. So we did talk about getting more South-South and learning going. Another interesting thing is the Brazilian definition of basic sanitation in Portuguese includes water supply, sanitation, solid waste and drainage. So they're already starting from that point. But we went beyond that, looking at integrated interventions, including housing, resettlement, urban spaces, green spaces. We discussed that even at the city level, there are many organizations involved in this, and how do you work more consistently with households and communities, with the different entities, be it the water company or be it the housing company coming into them. We also talked about the fact there can be different starting points for these investment programs, entry points or drivers, and in one case it was a potable water reservoir in Sao Paulo that was grossly polluted from slums with sewage and solid waste. In another, it was the beach of a city, which is an important tourist economic activity, is the tourism on the beaches was being polluted by wastewater. In a third, it was flooding that was happening to a poor area where there are 100,000 people. So there can be different drivers, but you can bring in integrated responses as a result. Most of these projects were multi-decade interventions, which we talked about as well. How do you keep it going? And we talked also about post-project and capacity to continue running the services. So in these World Bank projects, there was quite a lot of emphasis put on capacity building of the different entities as well. Leadership was important, and the leadership depends on the drivers, but that was also an important part of it. We talked about principled opportunism, so that if you want to do integrated interventions with water and sanitation, these different opportunities may appear, so grab them, and you can bring your principles with you when you do that, which might be citywide inclusive sanitation, water-wide cities, or whatever. And that good ideas will prevail, even if there are political changes with elections. If you've got a good project and a good idea, you can survive those political changes, but you've got to do advocacy about it. You've got to make your case. Yeah, okay. And the fact being that with World Bank projects or other multilateral development entities, the intervention is done through the government. That can be slow, but it also means that you're building capacity and that you're leaving behind some capacity as well afterwards. You're not bypassing them. I think that. Oh, you wanted to add something?
No. Nope. I think. Thank you, but I think we heard quite some details. I do want to go to the last part. Before that, we have one more reporting back from UN Habitat online. So either Sudha or Simon. Let's see if it works this time.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ashbeck. This is Simon here. To the audience, my name is Simon Okota with UN Habitat. Here is my colleague. So
could you switch on your camera because we can't see you?
Yes.
Yes, great.
So this is Simon. So pleasure. Yeah, I mean, we had a very healthy discussion. Those who didn't join our table probably missed a lot. And we did also get to the questions that was put forward. That is, to what extent is sanitation integrated in national urban policies? And the responses were very interesting. One is that can we start by doing some simple things that can be done to set the stage for integration in the first place? And that can include, for example, a city authority, appointing an officer or point person to represent the planning department to the, to the service sector that is in question, so that that linkage is able to bring on board aspects and issues that relate to sanitation. So that was one question response that came in. And then the second one alluded to the fact that as much as we've been putting together, sanitation and water are conjoined in most of the discussions, in most of planning, sometimes bringing them together on board disadvantaged sanitation. So there was the question of, can we try to address sanitation and water? So the question should have been, water in national urban policies or sanitation in national urban policies, so that each is treated with the priority and attention that they deserve.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being on time. And for those very important points. How do you balance integration versus specialization? So thank you for that. So we really heard a wide variety of highlights. I'm going to request all the table leaders to make sure that you've documented these things, because we're going to come back to you in a couple of days after you've recovered from Stockholm to capture these points again so that we don't leave them hanging. Another way that we want to end this session is, of course, a Mentimeter is always the best thing to end it with, because we heard a lot of highlights on why and what, etc., but we want to really understand what are the actionable steps that you take thereof, whether it is getting a national development commission or getting different drivers. Don't miss a crisis, it's an opportunity, right? Kind of what Martin said, and talk about emphasizing water and sanitation separately into the national urban policies. So please put down your thoughts in the next 2 minutes on the Menti screen up, so that it's useful. We spent the last 90 minutes discussing this. We were really into the topic, and once we leave that door, it's going to evaporate. So we really want to capture some of these ideas. So all of you who have smartphones, please scan this and put down your thoughts. Also, to those online, I'm sure you also contributed quite significantly in the process. So please do scan this and put it online. I'm going to now switch to the screen. We're already getting a few responses. Identify drivers, align stakeholders, continue discussions, peer learning, documentation. Let me do that first. Okay. No, don't worry.
There you go.
Okay, great. That's great that I'm getting a number of responses. You have multiple responses you can give. We're going to read all of this for sure. So don't think it's another one of those mentees that after you leave the door is going to vanish. I assure you that I will go back to this. So please do put down your thoughts. Maybe we have one more chocolate box, right? I love incentives in life. So maybe one of the best responses, we'll get a chocolate box. I can assure you of that. But how we evaluate the best is still something that we will I'm going to let Marisa decide because it is, isn't it? Expand the JMP wash ladder. Whoever wrote that, maybe you can give a bit more expansion on the answer so that we understand the perspective better. Keep talking. Continuous dialogue between various stakeholders is crucial to establish trust, which is crucial for integration. Clarify institutional roles, recommended policies, etc. Okay, great. Brilliant. So I feel like we've hit saturation at this point with 18 responses. I see a number of people still typing. Please do go ahead, but at this point we can already sort of come to a close. That this has been an extremely informative session. I am really thankful to each and every one of you, especially the table leaders who brought these questions and facilitated the discussions, and to all of you for participating and also putting down these responses. We will definitely make a summary of this, because CV will ask us to, but beyond that, we're also quite interested to actually get these discussions on paper and make probably a policy brief or just a blog at least. Something will definitely come off it, and I'm sure the session page will host that, I guess. So with that, we would like to close pretty much on time. Thank you so much for your participation, and thank you so much for being here. Also to those who are online, thank you very much, and wish you a good rest of the conference, and wish you a good evening. Thank you.